we're talking about getting data out of GP. So I'll start with a brief introduction. My name is Steve Michelson. I've been using GP since 2002. That was GP 8. I was previously a BI developer, so I've done a lot of pulling data out. And I've been using SQL since 98, which was 7.0. So a lot of that BI development work was back in the dark ages where we had to do a lot of transformations. It was offline processing. There's a lot of really cool stuff that we're going to get into now that performs really well and is a lot better than the old traditional BI analyst type work. So last thing is I love useful reporting. So we'll touch on that a few times. Reports have to be useful. They have to serve some kind of a benefit to us. At the end of the day, we need to have data that actually does something for our business, right? So this will be pretty quick. We're going to fly through a lot of these different things. We will have have these slides available to you at the end. And so you can dive deeper into these. I'll have some links to blog posts in these slides, so you can really dive in deeper and see how some of this stuff works. But the key purpose today is to pick the right report for the job. You know, ultimately there's a time and a place for everything, except pie charts. And we need to figure out when we can fit the right report to the exact need that we have. So we'll start now by looking at the different needs that some businesses have. Obviously, everybody needs financial statements. It's a pretty basic thing. Everybody needs them. There are several tools available to give you those financial statements. Maybe when you're reviewing those, you've got some problem solving you need to do. So why was this market so low? Better yet, what are we doing over here that's doing so well, and how can we replicate that elsewhere? I need to dive into some detail. So those are different types of reports typically. Taking it a step further, maybe we want to look at trending. We'll look back at history, see how we've done over time, use that to plan for the future. So what changes have we made? What changes are we making? And how can we plan this out moving forward? A lot of times as you're building these different reports, you'll come across different alerts, warnings that you need. Now those could be that something happened in the business that we need to act on right away, right? An item was received without a cost or something. It could also be something that could jeopardize a report running successfully. So maybe there's missing data or a job didn't run successfully and we need to make sure that that runs so that we can get the information that we need. After some of that basic reporting, the trending, you may really want to get into metrics and KPIs. So this is where you start getting the executive dashboards that everybody loves, but you've also just got real key performance indicators for yourself, for your employees, for your teams, to understand when things aren't going exactly to plan, when you need to adjust, maybe when things are going really well and you need to allocate more resources to something that's very successful. Those metrics and KPIs often can help you run your business very efficiently. The final thing we'll touch on is this concept of self-service BI. So how can my users just pull the data they need without intervention, without building reports for them or without building these KPIs out for them? I want to structure my data in such a way that anybody could come in here in my organization and get the information they need easily. That takes a lot of work on the back end, but makes for some very useful reporting going forward. Now again, we've got to make sure that these stay useful. So I'll definitely call out some risks on things like self-service BI where people could start pulling things in that are interesting. Interesting does not mean useful. Pretty is another one that does not mean useful, right? Some reports are beautiful, but they may not serve any valid purpose. So always keep that in the back of your mind when we're looking at these reports. So at the very beginning, we've got financial statements. Like I said, everybody needs them. You've got a few options within GP. You've got the advanced financials. So that's actually part of GP. We'll look into that. You've got management reporter. Most people have been using that for quite some time. Some were on FRX before that, which essentially transitioned into management reporter. And now we've got Jet Express, which is a new solution that's replacing management reporter. We'll also see some third parties. VI360 and Profix. We'll look into what those can do. Again, we're going to plow through some of these pretty quick, and we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. So if you see something that's really interesting, hold off till the end. We might be able to answer some of those questions. Here we are, advanced financials. I'm surprised how many times I've seen this actually, because Management Reporter comes with GP. This is inside of GP, so that's a big pro here. You've got it included with GP. It's part of the install. There's no separate install. You don't need to set up the viewer. It's somewhat similar to Management Reporter, but very, very pared down. It doesn't do a lot of the complex calculations and things that you could do with Management Reporter. It does operate right inside GP, which is nice. It's just not very flexible, unfortunately. Here we've got Management Reporter, so it's a lot more flexible than the advanced financials. You can set up row definitions, column definitions. A lot of you are probably using this now. You can combine those rows and columns with trees and really come up with some pretty complex financial statements that can get distributed across your organization and be specific to the departments where they're going. So you can limit that security so certain users can only see certain departments and really get the reports that you need to send out to them. The con here, of course, is that it's gone. So Management Reporter, I guess it's still here. It's no longer supported. People will probably use it for the next 20 years still, but it's just not going to get any more updates. It's been replaced with Jet Express. Jet Express is pretty great. So it's in Excel. Everybody's already using Excel anyway. Most of the financial statements I see just get exported to Excel. This gets you there. Very powerful, very flexible. Here you can see, you just click Fast Financials, for example. We've got the different accounts we can add. Click the different columns that we want. We can rearrange our rows and see the amounts, the budget, the variance, and just kick out an expense report like this. Really, really cool interface. Free. You guys all own it now as part of GP. So I'd recommend you go out, take a look at this because it is a really great tool. Migrating from MR isn't too bad either. Because this is all Excel, you can export your Management Reporter reports out and use those as a template to set up your new Jet Express reports. So it's really a pretty quick migration process. Next, we've got BI360. This is a third party. It's got a beautiful interface. It does more than just financial statements. Very powerful. You can drill in. It creates this auto commentary that you see here, machine-generated comments. So it actually looks at your data, generates comments based on what it finds. Of course, you can add your own comments as well. Really great tool for interactive financial statements and for drilling down into different departments, integrating into budgets, things like that. It is a separate purchase, and there is a bit of a learning curve. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to get in here and add department comments and really interact with your financial statements in a way that you can't with the GP out-of-the-box solutions. Then we have Profix. It's another one that integrates with budgeting, forecasting. It's also got a pretty beautiful interface, very simple to use. You can do all the same commenting. Similar solution if you really want a powerful budgeting, financial statement, forecasting solution, particularly strong with forecasting. Now that Forecaster has also gone to GP, this could be a very good replacement for that. So here we've got our sales forecast for different items. It's pretty easy to do the entry and to work with these. It also has workflows that you can use to pass this data around to different people and process it the way you need to achieve your forecasting goals. Then we've got problem-solving reports. So we mentioned everybody needs those financial statements. When you come across something that you need to drill down into, that's where you get into these. So we've got things like Smart List, Advanced Smart List, Navigation Lists, the GP out-of-the-box reports. What people may not realize is you've also got some SSRS and Excel reports that are out of the box. We'll touch on both SSRS and Excel reports again later too. But here we'll look at them from a problem-solving perspective. What type of reports do I have that I can use to answer some questions? Smart List. It's very powerful. It comes with GP, of course. I really hope everybody's familiar with Smart List. If you're not, look at our blog posts. Get yourself familiar with Smart List. This is a selling point of GP. I've seen people that are looking at different systems and they can't believe how amazing this query tool is, right? To pull data out of all the different modules without doing any kind of development. So very powerful tool. If you're not using it now, or if you don't think you're using it very well, invest a little time and get to know it because it's great. In this particular example, we're looking at invoices this month. So GL posting date right here is between the beginning of the month and the end of the month. So it's very easy to pull that type of data out. One thing I don't see people using with SmartList often are these export solutions. So I've got a blog post on this. Basically, you set up a macro in Excel. You save that onto the SmartList favorite under the export solutions option, and then we can actually export that and create a pivot table, for example, automatically. Just about anything you could do with an Excel macro you could do here. So here we exported this. It's going to Excel. If we go down and open that file up, we didn't just get our data, it automatically created a pivot table, grouping by the item number and giving us a sum of the extended price, or essentially the gross sales for each of these items. Some other things you could do with SmartList. We offer a product called Advanced SmartList. It adds compound searching, some grouping of your data directly in the screen. You can turn this on and off. So if you want to use your default SmartList for some specific reason, you can go back to that and then turn Advanced SmartList back on. It is a separate purchase, but it is very affordable. And I would definitely suggest you take a look at this. When your forced searches aren't doing it for you, this gives you a ton of flexibility, and you can stack them. So in this example here, we've got and at the base. So each of these groups need to be true. Here we can look at item description contains fee, or the customer class is not miscellaneous. And extended price isn't equal to 0, or the extended cost. Oops, I guess and the extended cost is not equal to 0. So you can stack those different filters, come up with really complex searches to give you exactly the data that you need. Similar to SmartList are navigation lists. So I don't see these used a whole lot either. They're very, very powerful because not only do you get the report, you'll notice these all have checkboxes. You can actually do actions with these. So we can actually take these and do something with them. You can select multiple records, one record at a time, and we could do things like print pack slips. So here I'll select 3 different orders. I'll go print my picking ticket. We'll send it to the screen. We won't look at the exception report. We'll send that to the screen too. And here when it generates, we've got 3 pages. Here are 3 picking tickets for those 3 orders. That also, if you're using advanced distribution, would have advanced those orders to the next stage, just like it does if you're working through the interface on the sales transaction entry screen. Very cool way to process orders or process documents. Some people call these action lists instead of navigation lists because that's really what you're doing. You're performing these actions with them. And then, of course, we've just got the plain old GP reports. You've seen these. That last picking ticket was actually one of these. They're text reports. None of them are very pretty. They're not going to export very well. But if you just need to look at something, you need to look at a trial balance, you need a report to show you some sales activity or something, it's still a pretty good way to drill in and check something out. So here we're in the sales series. We've got all these different report options. Each series has a handful of different report options. We'll look at an applied documents. We could create a new one or just modify this demo one that's already in here. And you could apply ranges. So we can apply restrictions to these or just print it with everything. So here we'll go to destination, make sure it's going to the screen, and then we'll go ahead and print it. And you could save this as an option for later too. Here you go. Here are all our unapplied documents. We've got 14 pages of them. I could use this to drill in and get the information that I need. Now I mentioned you've got some out-of-the-box SSRS reports and Excel reports. Here are the SSRS reports. The really great thing about these is you don't have to log into GP. So one, maybe I don't want to consume a license to just do some general reporting. That's a big complaint with SmartList, right? I just want to get in and look at SmartList, but I really don't want to take up that seat while I'm doing it. Well, you might be able to do that through SSRS. There's also some cool reports in here that you can't get elsewhere inside of GP. So it's definitely worth looking at. You do have to deploy it, but the method to do that's pretty simple. So here we'll drill into the finance folder, and here are the different reports we have in our finance folder. We can open one of these up, the checkbook register. It does look a little different than any of the reports you use in GP, but this SSRS interface works pretty well. You've got all your parameters up here. Here are the different options that you can select from or filter with. Click View Report whenever I change those, and the report shows up here. I can save this as PDF, print it, do just about anything with this once I've got it out. And you can modify these. So you've got a bunch of out-of-the-box ones. There's something called the report builder that's part of SSRS. You can load that, move things around, make this a little more friendly to export to Excel, for example, if you don't want to format a report, but you want something you could export. You've also got Excel reports. So here on the right is the screen that you use to configure all of these things. The first tab was our SSRS configuration. The second tab is Excel reports. We've got this reports directory here. That's where the reports are stored. So I would definitely save that on a network location where everybody can get to it. You simply click deploy at the bottom, creates all these reports. You can see I've got both my companies already deployed, so I've got that green checkbox there. So there is some configuration there. Some of these do mimic Smart Lists a little bit, but they're pretty slick. You just browse to your folder. We open these up here. I've got two of them open side by side. As you can see, these you could definitely build in Smart List, but now you're not in GP, you're not consuming a license, and these automatically refresh. So they don't store data. They are secure. When I save these, the data is removed automatically. When I open them, I authenticate with my Windows authentication and refresh the data. So they refresh on load, and you only have access if you have the proper security. You can't email this to somebody and have your data leave your company without your knowledge, right? This won't refresh for somebody else, and it won't even save with data in it. We've also got some dashboards in Excel we'll look at a little later. So now on to trending and planning. We've got Business Analyzer built into GP. There's also a secondary install if you want a standalone Business Analyzer app. I've seen people running that on a big screen to just cycle through some different analytics that they want on their boardroom or wherever it was. You can do something like that with Business Analyzer. We've also got, again, SSRS custom reports. So we'll talk about how we can customize those reports or build brand new reports to get some trending information. And then we've got some third-party products again. Smart List Builder is a really great tool by E1 that lets you modify those smart lists. It's not like Smart List Designer. It's somewhat similar, but it's a lot more powerful. You can do a lot of things with Smart List Builder, create go-tos, reference the same table multiple times, stack those joins a lot more efficiently. Smart List Builder is very powerful, and it also includes Excel List Builder and Navigation List Builder. So you can create your own nav lists. You can create new Excel refreshable spreadsheets that mimic the smart lists that you have. And then we've also got Tableau, which can make some very, very beautiful reports. Starting with Business Analyzer, these can drop right into GP. So there's a bunch of out-of-the-box ones, primarily looking at financial ratios and things, but there's still pretty good KPIs that you can start to include, and you can start to see trends right on your GP homepage. If you've got a complex account structure or something, you may need to configure those a little bit differently than they are out of the box. They make heavy use of the account categories for the most part. So if you've added categories or changed categories around, those will not necessarily work for you without some moderate configuration. A real cool thing about the Business Analyzer reports are that they can be used in Navigation List. So here I've turned on my Business Analyzer pane under Nav List. That report is only looking at the 3 customers that I have selected over here. So it's a really good way to compare maybe different customers, different vendors, anything that you're doing in Nav List, you can look at that on a Business Analyzer report. Those are on the back end SSRS reports stored in the KPIs directory. And then here we've got the report builder that I mentioned earlier. This is how you would modify or create a custom SSRS report. So it's extremely flexible. You can build just about anything here because you've got the T-SQL behind it. You can write the code and actually make it pull any information that you want. That is also the downside of this. It does really require, if not a developer, a very technically savvy data analyst or somebody that has a high familiarity with data processing and the GP database. So very powerful, but you could be somewhat limited if you don't have those skills in-house. Now onto the third party, Smart List Builder. Here's the interface. It uses friendly names for most of these. You can also look at the SQL Server tables. You could create your own views. You can do all the code in T-SQL if you want. But here, this is something that just about any accountant could figure out pretty easily, right? So I've got my sales line items. It sounds a little bit jargony, but I've got my RM, receivables management, customer master table here. So you just join those tables together. You've got friendly names for all the fields. You select whether you display them, whether it's a default on the smart list. And starting with GP 2015, I can modify the existing smart lists. That doesn't actually modify the existing. What it does is makes a copy and makes the original not available for people. So you can't break them. We can always roll back to those originals. But if the sales line item smart list doesn't give you everything you need, you can get around that now. You've also got the ability to add new custom calculated columns, restrictions, calculations, add go-tos, so you can open different windows from your smart list. And those restrictions can be user-specific or class-specific. So it's got a lot of flexibility here, and it's got two other builders, the Excel reports builder and the navigation list builder as well. And then finally, we have Tableau. So as you can see, it creates very beautiful reports. The color schemes, the text formats, everything that comes out of the box just looks great with very little effort. You can just run it directly from Excel. So you could export a smart list and just open that smart list up in Tableau. You can also reference the database, so you could create connections to your SQL server and pull certain tables or pull certain views. You can do some more development portions of this too, but just out of the box, you can make really, really beautiful reports. The downside is that it tends to, I've seen users just tend to make beautiful reports, right? It really does nothing for the organization. I'm not getting any information out of this. I'm just getting something that looks really pretty, and I want to look at this every Monday morning because it just makes me feel good. That's great if it makes you feel good, but really you need to focus yourself on getting good information, useful information out of the system. Here's some more dashboard type things coming from Tableau. These can be interactive as well. So on this one, all these little dots, I can actually select these and update my data on the side and on the bottom to reference that particular data point. So it gives you a lot of ability to drill down. A lot of data scientists, data analysts love Tableau because it does make the visualization portion very, very easy. And here's the last one. It's an income statement that's interactive, so you can actually see how things have happened over time. Looks a lot better than just your standard P&L. It's very easy to use. So great tool. I really love working with Tableau. Now let's move on to the alerts and notifications. So I mentioned we might need to get alerts when something happens, right? So I've got a circumstance that should never exist, or I just need to do something whenever this happens. So those are the types of alerts you want to set up. I don't like just getting alerts whenever something that I like to hear about happens, right? So maybe I want to know when we've reached 50,000 in new sales today. Well, now you're going to start getting that email every day. If you want to see that, generate a report, and you can look at it. You can go and get that data when you want it. These alerts really should be actionable. So when you start getting flooded with 200 emails a day, you ignore them all. If you limit that to only the things you need to act on right away, you'll never ignore those because they should be infrequent, and you'll know something's wrong when you get those alerts. So we've got some ways to do that. Smart list reminders, GP business alerts, SQL mail jobs, getting a little more technical, and we'll talk a little bit about E1 Extender, how it can do alerts on different windows in GP. So smart list reminders are great. They go right on your home page. So when you log into GP, you see different reminders you have. You could show the amounts or the number of transactions next to those. You do have to log into GP to see those, but if you're somebody that's getting into GP every day, it shows up right on your home page, and maybe those are the first things you act on. So we'll go ahead and set one up. Here I'll look at the quantity on hand is less than 0, so negative quantities on hand. First thing you want to do is save this as a favorite. So I'll create a negative quantity on hand. You can make this visible to just you or the system. We'll add it, scoot it over so you can actually see that whole thing. It says add a favorite and reminder. So normally you just have the smart list favorites. Here now I get a reminder when this condition is true. So when I have greater than 0 records, in other words, I have a item with a negative quantity, I want to be alerted. So I go back to my home page and I see it right there, negative quantity on hand. I've got 29 items negative. I can click that and open the smart list back up so I can actually see the details of that. So we've also got GP business alerts. So these go out through email, which is really nice. They do look a little daunting when you're setting them up, but there's some good defaults. And generally you can figure these out. It looks a little bit like code, but most people can get through this pretty easily. Again, beware of too many emails, because if you start getting emailed every hour, you'll just start ignoring them all. So here we'll set one up. They're right here under business alerts. We can create a new or modify an existing. These are all the out of the box ones. So we'll grab one of these. Let's look at past due customers. I can change this ID or change the name if we want to. I'll just go ahead and say next. Here's where we select the tables. So there's already these two tables selected, the customer master and the customer master summary. There's this concept to join. So what we're saying is these are related on the customer ID. So here, customer number is equal to customer number. So that's how these two tables relate. And here's where we set up the actual alert formula. So it looks a little scary, but if you read through that, that's actually aging period amount 2. So we're saying if 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 is greater than 0, I want to know. In other words, somebody's past due in one of these periods. I'll send this out through email. I'm already on this. You could add somebody else, multiple people. Here's the report that's actually attached. So these are all the columns that we're attaching. You could add new ones out of the box. This one has pretty much everything you'd need. And it's sorted by customer number. So we'll say next here. And now we can schedule it. So I want this to check daily at midnight, let's say. You could do this any time of the day. It's been around since 97, no end date. We'll keep a history of the alerts, and we'll go ahead and enable this one. So this will check every day at midnight. It'll only email if the report has data. So if we've got customers that are overdue, I'll get that email. Again, don't be scared off by this. You don't have to do this, but you could build your own business alerts directly in SQL. So here I've got an example of one that I've built looking for manufacturing bills of materials with a BOM name. So I've had people do this. There's some ways you can get this to happen through the interface, and it really should never happen. Your standard cost will be broken if you do this in GP manufacturing. Essentially, it's just a stored procedure, and you can see down here, the profile is your SQL profile, so ours is just called default. You've got recipients, you've got a select statement to generate the query results, and then attach it as a file. On this one is actually 0, so we don't attach those as a file, but you can attach the data as a text file export. So it requires T-SQL knowledge. You have to understand how to write SQL code. If you don't, that's fine, but just know that's an option, and you can build anything there. So it's completely flexible. Anything you can write in SQL, which is where your database lives. So you can pull any data out and create a reminder based on that data. You've also got E1 Extender Enterprise. So you've got a lot of people that are using Extender anyway. So just know that you can actually create alerts there too. Now those aren't data sensitive reports, although you could code things to make them a little more dynamic. But if you want to alert somebody when they get into a window to make sure they refresh the, rerun aging or do something, you can set those kinds of alerts up with Extender, and that is a third party. Now we've got metrics and KPIs. So we've already actually talked about Business Analyzer. We've already talked about those Excel reports. Now we'll look at the dashboards that come with those Excel reports. The new thing with Microsoft is Power BI. It's a really great tool. GP now has an OData feed, so you can actually feed directly into Power BI. And then we can pull these Power BI reports into our dashboard in GP now as well. And then third party, we've looked at Tableau. We'll also look at Jet Professional. Okay, so all of these tools, even though we've looked at them for some other things, do really great metrics, KPIs, dashboards, and those types of reports as well. So Business Analyzer, like we talked about, it's in GP. You can see it with the nav lists. Excel dashboards. So here we looked at those refreshing Excel reports. These come with that. There's a dashboard for every module. So you've got a financial dashboard, inventory, purchasing, sales. You can modify these too, and they just have to be deployed. So really powerful tools. Excuse the pie chart. It is Microsoft's default. They don't apparently have the same disdain for pie charts that I do. Here's another Excel dashboard. This is the purchasing dashboard. So you can see items below order point, late shipments, and some different KPIs and metrics that are maybe important to a purchasing manager or an operations person. Then we've got Power BI. So this has a really great interface, somewhat similar to Tableau. You can do a lot of really cool things through Power BI that you might do with Tableau. Most people, if you've got an Office 365 subscription, you probably have a license to Power BI already. So I'd look into that too if you're looking at some kind of tools to do dashboarding and do metrics and KPIs with. They also, like I mentioned, integrate into the GP homepage. So here's some examples. You can tell that it's a Power BI report from the logo there. So this is a Power BI report. I could put any number of those on my dashboard. You can drag them around, of course. And when you log into GP, then you can have some information that matters to you, and you can go and act on that information. Here's another example dealing with HR and some different things. Again, another pie chart, but pick the ones that really matter to you and really make some good, give you some data to make some good, useful decisions with. Jet Professional. Now we looked at Jet Express, right, with our financial statements, and that's a really great tool. Jet Professional takes that a step further. So we've got the same Excel integration, but now you're not just limited to the financial series. You get sales data, you can pull customer information out, purchasing, inventory, all the different modules in GP are exposed to this, and you can really do some cool digging into your data, make some Power Pivot charts, and use all your normal Excel functionality with a direct data connection to the different GP modules. Here's a budget report, for example, with Jet Professional. You get the KPI metrics here, little arrows telling you if you're doing good or bad. Some trending there at the beginning. So this is potentially a pretty useful report for somebody that's reviewing their budget. Then we've also got self-service BI. So I mentioned this is a way that you can pull data out without that report development. You can do on-the-fly reporting. So this has been pretty hot for a while now. Things like Tableau are making this a lot easier. Things like Jet are making this a lot easier. But we'll start with the things that you would already own. So analysis cubes, SSIS, which is SQL Server Integration Services, and SQL Server Analytical Services, SSAS. Those come with SQL, which is the back end of GP, so everybody here has SQL. Whether you know it or not, you've got SSIS and SSAS. They may not be installed because you only need the database engine for GP, but you at least own them. You have to turn them both on to turn on analysis cubes, but GP does come with some out-of-the-box cubes. What cubes essentially are this interrelated piece of data. So a cube, for example, defines the relation between customer and maybe sales period, let's say, and then pre-aggregates all the amounts. So instead of having to pull details out and see all of the sales transactions and run a pivot table, it happens on the fly. I just drag and drop my customer number on here, drag and drop my month on here, and I get pre-aggregated, pre-summarized data. So because of that, it works really, really fast. And because you've got out-of-the-box cubes, you don't have to develop anything for those. Some basic analytics can be done by just turning on or deploying those analysis cubes. Technically speaking, when you deploy those analysis cubes, it creates an SSIS package, and the cube itself resides in SSAS. So you can do that manually too. The benefit is that you have a lot more control. So this is your traditional ETL, or extract, transform, and load process. It's where you're going to maybe a data warehouse, you're deploying cubes, you're doing stuff with this data, you're manipulating this data, you're cleaning it, you're scrubbing it, getting it ready for reporting, and then you consume that data through something like Excel using cubes or through Power BI or some other method. So this is really just a method of preparing the data for that self-service BI or for that drag and drop, easy to use reporting. It does require significant development effort. So If you haven't used SSIS before, it's completely different from anything you've done in SQL. And the same is true for SSIS. In SSIS, the language isn't even the same. So while you're using T-SQL for everything in SQL and SSIS, you're using a completely different form of that for analysis services. And here's what the analysis services side looks like. So this is when you hear people talk about a star schema and a traditional data warehouse. This is where that resides, right? It's all done in SSAS. On the third-party side, we've got Jet Enterprise. This is the top offering from Jet, and it's pretty amazing. So what this actually does is gives you a UI, a streamlined interface for doing all that SSIS and SSAS work. Basically, it takes that maybe not completely out of the realm of a developer, but at least not so incredibly technical and so development heavy. It's got an interface where you select fields, you select tables, you choose which are dimensions, what are measures, right? So what of these are values that get aggregated, and what of these are dimensions that dictate what amounts I pull in. And then, of course, it has a viewer for all this. So you can view these dashboards, you can get really effective and beautiful reports out and still have those cubes to be able to do drag and drop and self-serve type analysis work. Here's a little bit of what that interface looks like. So here where I'm selecting fields, I'm building these out. Like I said, it's still maybe not completely out of the realm of a developer, but I think everybody here can probably look at this and at least see what it's referencing, right? You may not be able to understand what this is doing, right? How is this changing my data or getting my data ready for consumption? But you can at least look at this. They're friendly names. You can, in general, understand most of what you're setting up in Jet Enterprise. So as opposed to our example before in SSIS, where it looks completely foreign and you're reading code and you're looking at a bunch of stuff that sounds like jargon, this really does give you a really great interface where somebody that's not a developer can at least learn this, get familiar with it, and be able to build this stuff out. So to recap, just remember we've got different things that we're looking at whenever we're trying to build these reports, and think about what you're really trying to accomplish. So from things just like simple financial statements to solving particular problems, and make sure that it's always useful. So you can mix and match these different needs or these different sources to fit a very particular need, and just make sure that you're getting exactly what you need to see out of GP.